If you've never attempted to design a game or never studied psychology in your life, you might never have heard of Skinner boxes or operant conditioning. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the actual psychology behind this in this video because there are people on the internet who have already done it far better than I ever could. But in general, a Skinner box is any device that is conditioning you to repeat an action. Burrhus Skinner, who this obviously is all named after, found that it was an infrequent reward structure that drove an active response rather than a frequent one. To illustrate this, imagine for a second you had a magic button in your house that would dispense candy whenever you pressed it. If you knew it was every time, you would only obviously press the button when you wanted candy. However, if that button dispensed candy every third time you pressed it, it's probable that you would press it 3 times as much whenever you wanted candy. If we made it so the button dispensed candy randomly, maybe with a third odds, you'd probably find yourself pressing it a whole lot more. Most people watching this will have worked out what I am describing here is a slot machine, and that's generally when Skinner boxes are most commonly brought up. Yes, the colours and the lights and the music of a slot machine or a poker machine helps to keep you there, but it's really that infrequent reward structure which is really doing the most work. Unfortunately, increasingly as of late, there is a conversation that needs to be had about Skinner boxes in terms of video games. Intentionally or unintentionally, it's extremely easy for a game developer to use these techniques to, with want of a better word here, trick the player into thinking their game is fun. Especially, and I must stress this, if the mechanics are kept quite simple. Flappy Bird, Bejeweled, Candy Crush, Solitaire, Minesweeper, 2048, Cookie Clicker, Farmville. I could name these games for days. All these games are simple and use Skinner box mechanics. Normally, when one of these games are brought up in conversation, the response is something like, "God, I lost hours into that, and I don't even really know why. It wasn't even that fun." If you think that or something like that about any game really, you have probably been a victim of Skinner box mechanics. And every time I hear that sentence, I die a little inside, because games should never be something that are endured, not even the ones we play while waiting for a train. Rejecting Skinner box mechanics and the developers that use them is going to have to be one of the first things we do if we ever want to be respected as a medium. Like, can you really imagine films getting the Academy Awards and all the international acclaim they do if someone ever said, "Hey, you know The Matrix? I watched that like 11 times over the weekend and I didn't even really like it. It wasn't even that good." So this week I've been playing a lot of Mini Metro, and I started this with that rant about Skinner box mechanics because at this point I'm so excited to see a game that is simple but doesn't rely on Skinner box mechanics to be fun. If you've been watching, you have probably worked out that this game is about connecting stations and keeping the traffic flowing throughout the city. But it's its elegant simplicity that really makes it worth talking about. This game has no spoken words and barely any written text. When you open the game for the first time, you are shown 2 stations and 1 passenger waiting. Literally the simplest system. And the game just waits for you to work that out. That you need to get that passenger home by connecting a line. Here, Mini Metro is using curiosity to drive the player, rather than a reward. The game slowly zooms out, most of the time without the player even realizing, adding more stations, more carriages, complexity. Before you know it, you are managing this complex network with several lines and are making that tough decision between more tunnels or another train. The game introduces you to the mechanics and the levels over time, slowly giving you that difficulty curve, and that beckons you to master the game rather than beat the game, and that's an extremely subtle yet important difference. Just because there is no end state or win state for this game does not detract from the game's enjoyment. Every time you play, the cities appear in a random way, forcing you to adapt and switch up your strategy. Further levels add some new elements, which means that if you're the sort of person who likes puzzles, it's very easy to lose hours into this game. Building the network in Berlin feels distinctly different from building a network in Cairo, even though the differences between these two levels are only ever something like half as many tunnels or slightly faster trains. It's really common to see a game feel like they need to have 100 different types of an item to make an experience unique and fresh, and I really like to applaud the games that show this is not always necessary. Even the games we play on the train or waiting for a bus don't have to be a blurred dopamine hit based on operant conditioning. We can still get an iPad game that takes 5 minutes to play and less to learn, while still engaging and developing us intellectually. Really, nothing shows this clearer to me than what occurred a few hours after playing Mini Metro. I literally found myself studying metro maps of London and Berlin to see if I could work out how they used circle lines relative to regular lines. The game was slowly bleeding into my real life and educating me along the way. Imagine if Flappy Bird did that. Maybe we might have a few more people who knew what ornithology was.